Hey guys, it's Sylvia from Backyard Brushes in Fountain City, Wisconsin. And in today's video, it's all about flipping silver items that I have thrifted. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's get creating. For project 1, I chose the silver butter dish. A couple weeks ago, I received one from Sandra at Midwest Charm for our Saturday Night Live's Sift Thrift Challenge. And it was actually a fun, quick, and easy flip. So when I saw a silver butter dish at the Goodwill, I had to grab another one. I first coated it with Big Top by DIY to give the silver or the metal something for the paint to adhere to. I then chose Damask by Fusion, and I really don't know if I'm saying that right. And it is a mineral paint, so technically it does not need to be sealed. I went around the edges of the butter dish, and I also then decided to paint the inside of the butter dish. Using a baby wipe, I just kind of went around the edges of the whole dish, and I just followed the pattern that was in the silver. Using the Victorian lace by Fusion, I decided to paint over the center part of the damask of the butter dish. I was thinking I'd get a light pink, but the Fusion paint had such great coating, I didn't get any of that undertone. So I decided to take a little bit of the damask and mix it with the Victorian lace and make a lighter pink color. The damask kind of reminds me, if you're familiar with like the Waverly or the Rust-Oleum, I think that's called ballet slipper. It's just this really antique-y, light colored pink. So I just mixed up my own little, and it really didn't take much, but I just mixed a little bit of the pink with the Victorian lace, and then I just went to the center of the dish and I painted right over the Victorian lace. And I just painted the center, leaving the Victorian lace as a trim around the darker damask on the rim and the lighter damask in the center. I did stamp the center of the butter dish with an IOD stamp. However, for some reason, I did not get it on film, and I apologize. I chose a rose transfer from an IOD Rose Botanical Garden transfer book. And I actually, because of the shape of the butter dish, I took off the bottom half of the transfer, and I'm going to apply that first, and then I'm going to take the back off the second part of the transfer. That way, if there's movement or something, I don't have the top part of the transfer sticking to the butter dish where I don't want it sticking. So I'm just using that half of the backing to protect that part of the transfer while I adhere the leaves and the stem and go over the side and the ridges. So once I have my IOD transfer placed, I'm just going to grab that IOD stick and I'm just going to start rubbing the whole bottom part of that transfer. And honestly, my pinky, I'm not trying to be pretentious when I'm rubbing or painting or anything. I actually had surgery on my middle finger from an injury from a volleyball incident, and it affects my pinky, and I don't have as much control and movement, so it's not like I'm trying to keep my pinky up while drinking a teacup or anything. It's just an old injury. I learned I shouldn't be playing sand volleyball after I turned 40. Once I feel that the bottom part of the transfer is adhered, I'm just removing the backing of the second half, and using the same method, I'm just going to grab that transfer stick and start rubbing gently and patiently on the transfer. And then once I feel like it's applied, and you can tell by the difference in color and how it lightens up, I'm just going to slowly release the transfer. And if any parts of the transfer is still sticking to the backing, I can just take that stick, lay it back down, rub over gently, and re-adhere it. Then using the back of the transfer, I'm just going to rub over the transfer, making sure it's adhered to the paint, and varnish the transfer. Now, although the Fusion Mineral Paint does not need a sealant, the transfer does. So I am going over the project and sealing my transfer with DIY Big Top. I discovered these little wall hangers and I just love them. I think they might be used for dishes or to hang plates. So I just peeled off the backing, stick it exactly where I want on the back of the butter dish. My project is done and it can be hung. And although I don't show it in the video, I do attach this backing to the other projects in this video. For project 2, I'm using this little silver tray that I found at the Goodwill for like $2.99. I did spray it down with vinegar and water like I do most metals that I work with when I'm cleaning them. And for this project, I decided to use the DIY Salvation Solution to seal first and see how well the paint adheres to the Salvation Solution. It'll help prevent maybe some bleeding and gives the paint something to adhere to. So I'm using Bohemian Blue by DIY, and I'm just going to go around the edges of this platter, and it did take 2 coats. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of White Linen by Rust-Oleum, a chalk paint, and I'm just going to paint the center of the platter. Then I'm just going to take my Bohemian Blue and just kind of feather the edges a little bit. I'm going to be decoupaging, so I want that lighter background for the paper. However, I don't want the white to be showing through on the edges of the paper. So once that is complete and dry, I'm going to just take a baby wipe and I'm going to go around and I'm going to distress my metal and get some of that silver tones to come through. First I ran around the rim, and then I just followed the silver pattern or the pattern in the silver with a baby wipe. And DIY paint distresses pretty easy. Using DIY liquid patina, I'm going to cover the edges of the center of the tray, and then I'm going to cover the top half of the floor of the tray. And I am going to use a page that I tore out from a hymnal. So I'm just going to lay that page over the area, and I'm going to press down, adhering the top portion of that hymnal to the tray. Using my fingers, I just press down to adhere the hymnal, and it also helps smooth out some of those wrinkles. At the end, I didn't have hardly any wrinkles, so I did not use the heat method to iron out the wrinkles. And still using the DIY liquid patina, I'm just going to adhere the bottom half of the hymnal to the bottom half of the tray. After the hymnal page was adhered, I gave the hymnal a top coat, still using the liquid patina. You can use whichever decoupage medium is your favorite. I just prefer to use the liquid patina. I just get minimal wrinkles. I decided to use the lighter to burn off the edges around the hymnal that is not adhered to the tray. Usually paper burns rather quickly for me. However, for whatever reason, I had to go around continuously in smaller sections to burn the edges off the hymnal. I like the burned effect around the edges. I chose a transfer out of the IOD, and I'm going to murder this title, Collage des Fleurs. I do not know how to speak French. And I'm just going to lay the transfer down right over the sealed hymnal piece using the stick that comes with the transfers, and you get a stick with every transfer you purchase. I'm just going to rub my flour and slowly just start lifting up, knowing that I should be patient and that if any piece comes up with the backing, I just can lay it right back down and re-rub. I then use the back of the transfer again to varnish the transfer to the paper. And again, transfers do need to be sealed. And since I was using liquid patina as my decoupage medium, and it can also be used as a sealant, I just went ahead and stayed with the liquid patina, and I sealed the flour and the paint. Next, I chose a little bit of Dark and Decrepit by DIY, which is another type of patina. And I just took my brush and I kind of just dabbed around the edges of the burnt paper just to give it a little bit more detail where it had been burned and to give it a little bit of pop. I then used the Dark and Decrepit and I painted over the Bohemian Blue just to kind of give it more of that rustic feel. And here's kind of what it looks like once it's applied. And I did adhere another one of the dish hangers to this project as well. For project 3 and 4, I am using the items from this set that I purchased. I removed the glass dish, and it was a 3-piece set for $6.99 at the Goodwill. Using Skeleton Key, I gave the lid of the set a good coat and went with a baby wipe and distressed the edges. I sealed the paint with Big Top by DIY. Using cake batter, I went around the edges of the handle and the trim, and to be honest, I really didn't care for it, so I did take quite a bit of it off with the baby wipe, but you could still see some of the yellow. I then applied a transfer from IOD's Wild Bloomin'. Following the same method, I just rubbed the transfer and was patient and peeled the transfer slowly off, rubbing as I'm removing the transfer. Part of the transfer peeled up on the leaves, and I want to show you what I did to correct the situation because I could not get it back on using the transfer paper. It kind of rolled up and tore. So I'm going to place the transfer back on, varnish it, and of course the leaf came off again. So just using my fingers, it's kind of like a puzzle. I just kind of pieced it back together where it looked like it belonged. And I wasn't that good at it, but just using some patience, taking a couple deep breaths, I was able to get my leaf back into the place. And then I decided to use patina, the DIY liquid patina. And I am going to reapply and kind of decoupage that leaf back into place. So using a baby brush, I grabbed the DIY liquid patina, and a little bit of the stem was coming off also. And I just used that liquid patina and kind of decoupaged the pieces of the transfer that didn't adhere. And I just pressed down with my finger. And just went around the edges and underneath. And then trying to keep it back in place was probably the hardest. So we're just gonna throw liquid patina down and replace the leaf. I did like the way it turned out in the end, and you could barely tell that I had mended the leaves back together. So if you ever have a situation in the future where your transfer rips, just remember that the liquid patina can be used to re-adhere the transfer. And then looking at it, I realized I did not film. I had felt something was missing, so I used some of the salt wash mixed with the skeleton key, and I texturized the side of the lid, and I just noticed now, so I do apologize. I didn't film it or remember that I even did it. So now I am going back through, and I have applied DIY white wax, and I'm using a paper towel to remove the excess wax. Then when I was actually doing this, I remembered I didn't seal the paint after I applied the new coat of paint with the salt wash. I didn't know if it would come off or what would happen because you're supposed to seal it before you use the wax, I think. So I went through and I reapplied Big Top after I removed the majority of the wax, gave the project another coat of white wax on the edges, and removed the white wax. And here's the finished project. And project 4, we're using the tray. that came in the set with Project 3's lid. And I chose to use Apothecary. I just love that green. So Apothecary by DIY, I'm going to paint around the edges of the tray. With the DIY Apothecary, it did take 2 coats, and I also sprayed the tray with Rust-Oleum paint before I applied the Apothecary, just as something for the paint to adhere to. I chose Crinoline by DIY, and I just kind of, again, used my patience, tried not to rush, and I just went around the edges I used the tray as my lead and just kind of followed the curves of the tray. And I filled in the center of the tray with the crinoline. And once that was done, again, I used a baby wipe to distress the edges. I just personally like the silver showing through on those patterns. Using DIY Big Top, I seal the edges of the tray. Oh, and the center too, it looks like. And then I made sure that it dried really well. I believe I actually let it dry overnight. Using a transfer from IOD's Lover of Flowers, I picked out a rose with a saying. I trimmed the IOD transfer and I actually put slits where I thought it might go with the curve of the tray. Then I do remember I can layer transfers. So I decided to lay the rose down first, and then I could put the words on top of the rose. Just like the other transfers in the other projects, I removed the back, used the transfer stick that came with the transfers, and I just slowly rubbed the transfer down. And first you got to remove the backing. I just placed the transfer where I liked it, rubbed the transfer with the stick, practiced my patience, and removed the backing and varnished the transfer. After varnishing and the transfer is secure, I chose Big Top to seal the project. I also applied a adhesive hanger, one of the plate hangers, to this project also. Okay, so which one was your favorite? I think my favorite was the one with the hymnal. However, I do like the simplicity of the roses. And I really do want to know if you're now going to be out on the hunt for silver serving dishes, especially butter dishes. If you found this video inspirational, please hit subscribe below and follow me along on my creative journey. Thank you.